I got the opportunity to take a tour of Disney Indoor Agriculture System located here at Disney World Epcot. The first thing I did was the Living on the Land boat tour. This tour takes attendants through the greenhouse and also a brief history of agriculture and how we can move to more sustainable methods. At first, the tour went through various environments, talking about how each of these environments pose different challenges to nature and its inhabitants. This section represents a more tropical region, including this alligator guy who's kind of just chilling. This is a very Disney-style ride with impressive animatronics and various scenes. Overall, this section was brief. The next section included various photographs of agriculture over the years, and transitioned into modern images with ideas of how to make agriculture more sustainable overall. One of its points was using natural pesticides like insects instead of chemical pesticides like we typically see. Overall, I would say that this intro was good, and it was very pretty overall. The next section of this water boat tour is the actual inside of the Disney greenhouse. I visited in early spring, so depending on the time of year, you may see different plants flowering. So as we enter the actual greenhouse, first thing you see is fruits like here's dragon fruit and a bunch of other various plants. So something that I was a little surprised with is actually using sand. It was kind of a weird choice that I did get an answer to on the tour. They had this Moana little feature here that just kind of included some flowers and such like from the movie. A lot of the fruits that they were growing here were definitely not typical in vertical farms, which kind of makes sense because this is really just a idealistic scenario for them, just trying to make it look really good. I believe a lot of these systems are probably actually not very effective, where it's way more complex than just growing in the soil would be, and it doesn't really provide much benefit, but it looks absolutely beautiful. Over here they have a few more herbs. We were in that section in the actual tour, which I will go into more detail in that part of the video. But this is an absolutely beautiful greenhouse. I mean, even if the amount of plants they were growing was not very useful, it was still absolutely stunning to look at. And a lot of stuff they were growing here, we didn't really even think that, can we really grow this vertically? I imagine it's not very efficient, but it's still very cool to see it actually being done in an indoor environment like this. So between the two greenhouses is this here area, which is their fish farm. So here they're doing all different kinds of fish farming. I don't know that much about this, and it's not something that we do typically at Grow Space. So I'm not very familiar with this, but it's still impressive to see them doing it. So as we exit this part of the tour, we go into the larger greenhouse. This one isn't like a dome like the last one. This one's definitely a lot more of effective solutions that might have some actual economic viability. So the way that these systems work, I learned this on the tour, is that there's essentially a bunch of piping underneath all of these plants, and each one is getting fed nutrients directly to them. And here at Disney, they focus mostly on plants that have pretty high yields, so stuff like a blueberry as an example, which is not going to feed a lot of people. They don't really grow much. They want to focus on stuff like a chard or lettuce or grain that has a really high chance of feeding a lot of people. Again, and a lot of flowers as well, which are very pretty. Something I was a little surprised to see on this tour was sugarcane. That's not something that we've really tried just because of how massive it is. We've done mostly leafy greens, of course. And then something else is crazy is these tree things. So they aren't really trees. They've just grown them in a way that makes them so that they're all on the top of these trestles. It was very impressive. So in this area, they're growing vining plants like these cucumbers, which will simply climb up these strings as they grow. This next system is their NFT system. This is what we use at Grow Space. This is by far the most efficient system here. If vertical farming is going to scale, or I should say when it's going to scale, it's going to be with the NFT system most likely. This next area with these sweet potato trees, as they so call them, was really impressive to me. So what they do is they have the plant start in a pot, and then they remove the pot and all the dirt around it. That's a very interesting solution. It's very inefficient, but it looks really cool. And this system here as well is definitely not efficient, but they look really cool. That was definitely a lot of what was here. Like these melon trees as well were very much so like really spectacular looking, really futuristic looking, but they're definitely not really going to be effective at scale. Here are some more of those cucumber plants. These ones are just older. This system has had some success, these cucumber ones, in actual economic settings. So this next section was really interesting. So this is more aeroponic growing methods. I'm definitely going to talk more about these in the next part. So these systems are stuff like these Brussels sprouts and kale. These were very impressive. And over here, this is what I was really interested in this part, was their aquaponics system. So essentially the nutrients from the fish poop are going to fertilize these flowers and allow them to grow. We actually looked into these systems for a minute for grow space. We ruled them out pretty quickly, mostly because you still have to supplement other nutrients. So I was, at least in this system, we don't really think that this is going to be something that's really scalable, just because of that. But there are some very large farms that are having success with this growing method. Again, a lot of this stuff is flowers. These flowers are absolutely beautiful that they have here. After I completed the ride, I signed in for the Behind the Seeds tour, which is an add-on you need to book ahead of time. This tour goes into more depth into their systems and allows attendees to ask questions. So the first part of the tour was really just about their pest control. So these are some flies that are really annoying in farms, but they breed their own wasps and they use lizards inside the farm like that to keep all the pests under control. So the first big system we saw was the aeroponic system, and this one in particular is just a bunch of these plants that are just suspended on these rods, and they're watered from below. So they go over this gap just so we can see the roots, but then they go into this metal casing, which inside of it there's these little water sprayers. You can see it a little better in the next clip, but that they are essentially just being hosted over the air, and then water is being spritzed on them. That's what makes it aeroponic, because most of the time the roots are simply in the air and the water is being sprayed onto them. A very effective solution, and very low waste overall. So these are some hydroponic towers. They're using a medium in them called vermiculite, which is essentially like a little pebble that the roots can latch on into, and then the whole tower is then watered. These are pretty effective solutions. You can grow some stuff in these you can't grow in other places, like carrots you can actually grow, and then some varieties of flowers grow better in these, but we typically don't use them. So in this next part of the tour, she ended up showing us this simple fish tank setup, where essentially what it was is it's just a tank of water with some plants in it. So in this case, it's a flower, and you could actually grow different kinds of lettuce, and this would be really effective. But this is definitely the easiest way to start hydroponics at home. We probably will have some videos in the future kind of explaining these methods, and how exactly they work and why they're so easy. All that's in this tank here is just the roots for the plants, and then there is a air stone in there like we would see for an aquarium, just to keep the water cycled and moving. So these are the vines similar to those cucumbers. These are some of their seedlings, very similar to what we do, and these are some vertical growing systems as well. We haven't ever tried these before. We've talked to some people about them. These are kind of interesting as well, these wall-mounted ones. This is what they call spiral NFT systems, and the way these work is essentially it's just spinning and the water is pumped to the top, just like an NFT, and it flows down to water the plants. These are those sweet potato trees mentioned earlier. This is just going to be a little bit of a better view of them. So they start in these pots over here, which is filled with like cocoa coir, which is a type of medium that's used very commonly in hydroponic growing. And what essentially they do is they just let them grow there, let those plants grow, and then eventually they just remove those pots with that medium. And this here was something that I was really excited to see, was their actual NFT system. So the solution is pumped up to the back with those small flexible tubing, and it comes from this whole monstrosity of piping that goes throughout the whole area. Essentially all this is doing is recycling it, and it's also running it through the nutrients which are needed. So it's going to add those nutrients that the waters need, and then over here is the chiller, which is going to chill the temperature. So by keeping it at a cooler temperature, the water that is, the plants will think it's cooler and they'll become a little fluffier, like it's more natural. And these are those cucumber plants from earlier. They are in these rock wool buckets, which are going to now, they will just grow up these strings, and that'll be enough for them to attach onto. And then these trees here, this is an eggplant tree, quote unquote, but these are just, they're essentially just manipulating the plants so that they grow in this way. This is very much so a really overcomplicated system for growing eggplants and other similar fruits like this. Again, with this system as well, where it's like we're growing these things more so for the effect than proving that they're actually going to be an effective solution. So the second greenhouse over here is this big old dome. It's very impressive. I got a pretty good shot there. So this one was the first greenhouse we went through on the water tour, but in this in-person tour, it's the last one. So here is just a little bit more density and a little bit more like herbs, some vanillas here. They've got all kinds of different plants. So over here they talked about how they do pollination. So the way that they do that is they simply rub the flowers up against one another, or they will use something like a toothbrush or a paintbrush in order to spread the pollen around. So they don't have anything like a butterfly or a bee in here to do the pollination. So as the tour kind of wraps up here, I'm going to talk a little bit about the sand. So the reason they said that they had the sand was to simulate less ideal conditions like the middle of the desert. But overall, I'd say that this was a very idealistic scenario. I would definitely recommend anyone who is going to Disney anyways to definitely check out this tour and this behind the scenes tour. I would definitely love if you guys subscribed and liked the video. If you have any comments or questions, leave them in the comment section down below. I'll respond to any questions and as many comments as I can. And thank you all so much for watching this video. Check out this video shown up above if you want to learn more or see more of what we've been up to. Thanks for watching.